Hey friends, welcome back. I am Jason.
Suburbia, the place that we're in right now, can have a whole list of problems if hard times should come upon us. A lot of prepper type individuals would look at this place and see death. They would see a whole lot of people that are unprepared for difficult times because they can't grow their own food. They probably aren't stockpiling anything. They don't have the necessary preparations that would see them through some really difficult times.
If you look closely, we can see suburbanites in their native habitat. Look at them getting their morning exercise. You can always spot the suburbanites because they pick up their dog's poop, carried around in bags. Regardless of where you live, urban, suburban, rural, wilderness, it doesn't matter. Survival is always going to come down to food, fire, water, shelter, security perhaps, and first aid. Fire, when I say fire, I don't necessarily mean literally flaming fire. What I mean is potentially some sort of heat source for your home. Luckily in this area, the wintertime, it does not get that cold. So people are generally not going to freeze to death. As long as you have a good shelter, you have a good home that's fairly well insulated, you're not going to freeze to death as long as you have warm clothing, blankets, sleeping bags, that kind of stuff. So that's not really that big of a challenge in this area. In much further north areas, locations, your suburbs are going to be very frosty without some sort of heat source. Like this neighborhood, for example, is heated almost solely by natural gas that gets pumped into this giant big neighborhood with thousands of homes. That's what's heating the homes in the area. Without that flow of natural gas, if some sort of big disaster should happen, man-made, natural, doesn't matter, some big disaster should happen and the natural gas stops flowing, all of these homes will be quite chilly in the wintertime. So having sleeping bags, warm blankets, good solid winter clothing, that kind of stuff could be really, really important, because I would almost guarantee that none of these houses have any sort of backup heat. Some of them have fireplaces, but they're not very efficient for heating the home other than that small little isolated spot by the fire itself. None of these homes have wood stoves. None of them have backup, even electric heat. They're all natural gas heated. Speaking of fireplaces, this neighborhood has a fireplace in their clubhouse. Look at this monster. Water is another big issue. So if some sort of cataclysmic thing should occur, water would potentially stop flowing. None of these homes have wells. None of them have their own personal water supply. They are all fed by the city's municipal water supply. And if that should be shut off, contaminated, compromised in some way, all of these people, thousands of people in this huge neighborhood, are going to be in some serious trouble really, really fast. And they're all going to be scrambling to figure out what to do. And the shelves at the local grocery store with the bottled water are going to be empty. Well, there is a water supply here. There's a big lake. There's pools. There's water here, but accessing it, purifying it in some way is going to be the difficult task. It's going to be difficult to come down here to this lake, gather the water, collect it in some way, get it to your home, to be able to use it for drinking water, bathing, all that stuff. So rain collection, I think, is a smart idea if you live in a suburban area. It's very easy to collect water off of your roof from your downspouts. Very, very simple to do that. You can purify that water, filter that water so you have something safe to drink, and you can have water for other purposes as well. So I would highly recommend water collection, especially if you live in a place like this in Georgia where it rains a lot. It's probably the easiest, simplest way and least expensive way to have a steady supply of water if hard times should come and the city's water should stop flowing. There's some water right there, and it hasn't even rained. That's just dew. That's just dew from the cool night that we had, and as the sun comes up, it's dripping off of the roof. And going back to fire, having a way to heat your home, let's talk about fuel for example. Even if you have a wood-burning stove of some sort in this area, while there are a lot of trees right now, if people started using that wood to heat their home, how fast would all these trees go away? Pretty quick. There's not enough trees here to really sustain this many people if they're using it for heat. This would be leveled in a short period of time for sure if that's what people were relying upon. So that makes it really difficult, and that's why I just go back to having warm clothing, all of the layers that you could put on, huddle your family in one room, heat that one room perhaps. That might be the smart way to do it. I love this dog. We're
Oh.
best friends. Layla, we're best friends.
Oh, you want some love over here? She's like, I can't get enough.
Oh,
Hi.
yes.
Hi. Aren't you cute? Yeah.
I like this dog.
Oh, thank you.
You could snuggle up with this dog and stay warm,
Oh,
that's
yeah.
for sure.
Oh my gosh.
Food is another really big concern, and if there's any place that you need to have stockpiled food, it's in suburbia like this. Urban areas, suburban areas, you need to have stockpiled foods because growing it is going to be very difficult. While there's plenty of land here to have like big community gardens, it's just not being done. Like this, for example, this is all wasted in my opinion. Like all this grass is useless. I mean, all it does is just waste time, energy, money being maintained as grass. You could have a huge garden right here, and I would highly encourage you starting community gardens in your neighborhoods. If you're a member of the HOA, ugh, gross. If you're a member of an HOA and you're one of the higher ups in that community, I'd highly suggest that you start a community garden, big garden, where you can actually produce some food for the community. Is it possible to feed everyone on the land that's in this neighborhood? Is it possible to feed all of the people that live in this neighborhood with the land, open space existing here? I don't know. It'd be tough, but it'd be better than nothing, that's for sure. Now, talk about wild sources. You know, there's hickory trees here, there's oak trees here. We can get acorns off of it. So there's some food here. There's a lake here that has fish in it, but it's very limited. There's deer that wander through this neighborhood from time to time, basically like pets. I think people feed them. There's wildlife in this neighborhood, but if times got tough and people were hungry, it'd be gone in a hurry. It'd be gone really, really fast. So even the fish in this lake, I mean, people would be fishing this lake and emptying it out really, really quick, as opposed to all the sport fishing and the catch and release that they do in here now. Everyone would keep all the bluegills and all the bass that they catch and just be frying them up every single time. So it'd be annihilated quickly. And these guys would be easy pickings right here. Very easy to get them with a slingshot. Quietly. No one would know. The problem with this water down here, not only is it going to be contaminated with bacteria and stuff like that, it's going to make you sick because of the runoff. The runoff is the problem because people fertilize their lawns. There's all sorts of chemical contaminants in this water that's going to have to be filtered out to make it safe to drink. Could I drink this potentially as is without getting sick? Maybe, maybe not. But as infrastructure deteriorates in difficult situations, and let's say that SHTF situation, as infrastructure deteriorates and let's say sewage was becoming an issue and getting rid of that was becoming more and more difficult and there were flaws in that system and it was breaking down, this water would get more and more and more disgusting and contaminated as time went on. So having a solid filtration system for your home is super important. Yeah, people are going to be bathing in this lake. You know, if water should stop flowing to their homes, they're going to be desperate and go back to third world type behaviors, and this water is going to get pretty scummy. But when we're talking about food, let's switch gears and go to food. Most of the homes, fortunately, in this neighborhood, unlike urban areas, are fairly large, and there's plenty of space for storage. Almost all the homes in this neighborhood have basements, so lots of room, cool, dry, dark places where you could store food for a long period of time. And it does not cost much money to store rice and beans, for example, in Mylar bags with oxygen absorbers inside of buckets. And you could stack that stuff to the roof and you could have years of rice and beans, for example, not just rice and beans. I wouldn't rely just upon that, but that's just one example. You could have years of that stuff stored away in your basement, in your suburban neighborhood. No one would have to know about it, but it would be a very, very solid insurance policy. I like to fish, you know, and this right here looks very promising as far as like brim and bluegill. I bet there's some monster bluegills in here, some turtles sitting on the rock right there. We can make a nice, tasty soup. Man, I should do a whole series on hunting and fishing in suburbia. That'd be fun. This is an HOA neighborhood, and I used to live in an HOA neighborhood for a little while, and it was so irritating, you know, people telling you that you have to make sure there's no weeds in your lawn. There's like this guy over here behind me. He's got a weed in his yard. I was thinking about putting a note in his mailbox and letting him know that I don't approve of his lack of lawn care. But anyway, and I don't like the color of his house. I think he should paint it a different color. A big part of being prepared is having a properly maintained shelter, your home.
making sure that the roof isn't leaking, making sure that it's not falling down and collapsing upon you, making sure it's well insulated, making sure the windows all work and all that stuff. Being part of an HOA neighborhood has some benefits in that realm, is because they basically force you to maintain your home, at least to some degree. So if there is any benefit to living in an HOA neighborhood, that's probably it. Now, talking about security, having a secure home, making sure all the locks and stuff on your home work properly, I think is really important. But to be honest with you, it's not that difficult to break into really any home. It's break a window and you're in 30 seconds or less, regardless of what's going on. Security systems and all that stuff, assuming electricity's still flowing and that they still work, I think that's all really, really smart. Having the signs up saying, you know, secured by this security system, I think that's good, because what it does is it pushes potential bad guys on to the next victim. I know that sounds bad, but you have a priority. You have a priority to look after your home, your family first. And if you can get people to look past what you are doing and move on down the road to find easier prey, then that's a really smart choice in my opinion. So in this neighborhood, you're not going to be able to put up gates and fences and stuff. I guess you could have a fence around your property, but you can't really put up gates on your driveways and things like that, because that would be great. That'd be really smart if you could. Living in a neighborhood like this is actually pretty good for security reasons, probably in my opinion, because you have people around you that can kind of keep an eye on things. There's a lot of ears listening for bumps in the night, which is nice. If you live in a really rural setting and you're all by yourself, isolated in this little cabin in the middle of nowhere, someone comes in the middle of the night, you're on your own. Now that's the really, really important aspect that I think a lot of people neglect, and that's community. This neighborhood's not bad. They have get-togethers and barbecues and cookouts and things like that, but a lot of people don't know their actual neighbors, like the neighbors that live across the street or right next door to them, because a lot of people just stay inside their homes and they never come outside. I think for security purposes, it's really smart to know all of your neighbors, at least in your immediate vicinity, so you can know who you can count on, who you can trust, the people that you need to watch out for potentially if times should get tough, if you got some shifty people in the neighborhood. You just don't know, and you won't know that unless you get out and start meeting them. So if you see Bill across the street outside mowing his lawn or whatever, go introduce yourself, say hello. You got to get outside your comfort zone a little bit. You know, not everybody's into that. Not everybody's a people person, but you still got to get outside and say hello. So when difficult times come, that we won't be meeting these people for the first time, and perhaps when tensions are high and people are afraid and hungry, you don't want that to be the first time you've met this guy. So people will be a lot more untrusting when those times come. Gated communities are probably of some benefit because it makes it less easy for would-be people to come into the would-be burglars and people that want to cause problems and create crime. It makes it a little bit more difficult for them to get into the neighborhood. And if it's not convenient, they might pass on by and move on to the next neighborhood that doesn't have a gate. It's a little bit easier to get in and out faster. One of the biggest difficulties that people have in areas like this when trying to gather up like-minded individuals is that they don't want to appear as if they're some weirdo conspiracy theorist prepper guy. And they don't want to look like that really big oddball, so they won't put themselves out there and present some of these topics to people, like even their immediate neighbors. And I think that we've got to get over that to some degree. And I'm the same in some ways. There's some people that I don't mind talking freely about the stuff that I'm interested in and the preparedness topics. And then there's some people I'm a little bit more reserved because I know that they don't feel the same way that I do. But I think we have to get past that to some degree, because otherwise we'll never be able to build up the community around us. And if you live in a place like this, the community is super important. It's going to be your biggest asset and your biggest liability. The people will cause all of the problems, and they'll also solve all of the problems. So it's going to be, when hard times come, let's talk about that. I don't necessarily think that there's going to be some giant, EMP event that's going to cause massive blackouts across the world and everything's going to go back to the dark ages and we're going to start napping Flint again to process our game. I don't think that's going to happen. I think it's going to be a steady decline of society as we know it. Crime is going to increase, more and more problems are going to happen, but it's going to be a slow boil. And then I think times will get better eventually. But that's just my theory. You leave your theories of what the future holds in the comments. That would be great. But that's what I think. So I think that we're going to see a steady decline in our society. We're going to see increases in crime in areas like this. It's going to become more and more difficult to access the supplies that we need. Food shortages, all that stuff is going to get harder and more difficult before it gets better. But it will get better. Anyway, I'd love to hear what you guys think about this topic. Make sure you're hitting the thumbs up, subscribing if you haven't done so already, and I can't wait to see you on the next one. So the suburbanites in this neighborhood, I parked my truck right here one time and they called the cops on me. Not on me, they called the cops on the truck. Apparently, it's not up to their suburbanite standards.